Hey, MAGA. A lot of shit going on today. Smash that like button when y'all coming to the live, man. Just want to let y'all know I'm also going to be streaming on Rumble, where the platform is already monetized. So you could check over here and on Rumble. I'm not on Rumble right now, but stay tuned. Stay tuned. I will be advertising it on this channel as soon as I figure out how to work that system over there. But in the meantime, double tap that screen, smash that like button. Y'all know what it is. I'm back for some more debates, rants, raves, cries, and cream puffs. Smash that like button. Let me send this out to my peoples. All right, there we go. Double tap that screen when y'all get into the live, man. Y'all know what time it is. Waiting on Kenzie, Infinite Content, Miss Pitbull, B, my man, my girl Aloha Kitty. I think that's a girl. We live, folks. We live. Let's get to the business. Bam. Welcome to the chat, y'all. Welcome to the chat. Breaking news. Some shit going on overseas. But you know what we're going to do today? We're going to go to Fox News. Let's go to Fox News. I think today calls for a Fox News day. Just to kill some shit. See what they talking about. Come on, MAGA. This your favorite news cycle on. Let's go.
You can select from multiple AI avatars, and they come with different styles, outfits, and even backgrounds.
Todd.
Ash, the commander-in-chief, making his preference clear, saying he'd rather make a deal with Iran to stop the killing, but the devil's in the details. A possible breakthrough involves the Strait of Hormuz reopening as Tehran works with Oman on a route to open the key shipping route. Trey Yanks joins us now from Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey Todd, good morning. The Middle East is waiting to see if a deal can be reached on the Strait of Hormuz to avoid a return to conflict. The president spoke last night from Las Vegas about the Iranian regime.
We're knocking the hell out of it. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to kill people. I do not want to kill people. But at some point we're gonna. We were set for the biggest attack of any attack, and we've hit them very hard for the last few months.
Reports do indicate that progress in talks between Iran and Oman aimed at opening the strait, led in part by Gulf allies urging the president not to strike.
I can say that the latest situation is that almost all of the topics are under discussion. The map, the transit routes, the entering and exiting the maritime traffic, and those bilateral side agreements with Oman.
Amid the possibility of a return to conflict with Iran if an agreement isn't reached, President Trump posted to Truth Social overnight about reports the United States is running out of air defense interceptors. The president said in part, the U.S. has massive amounts of munitions, especially of certain types. He goes on to say additionally, large amounts are being manufactured and shipped to the U.S. as needed. Defense companies are building the largest number of plants and factories in our country's history. We know the United States continues to supply Israel with air defense systems and interceptors needed to deal with Iranian missiles.
And I want to make it clear, President Trump is our great friend, the greatest friend we had in the White House, I mean to say. And the United States, it is our great ally, and everyone understands this as well. We greatly appreciate our joint efforts with the United States against Iran's nuclear ambitions, but I also wish to convey the existence of Israel is not up for negotiation, with an agreement or without an agreement.
While coordination continues between Israel and the United States, the IDF says 2 of their soldiers were killed yesterday in an IED blast in southern Lebanon, that IED planted by Hezbollah. Todd?
Trey Ying's live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. With that, let us bring in senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Rebecca Heinrichs. And Rebecca, let's talk about the deal. To me, this seems like MOU Part 2. Why should we think that this time would be any different?
I don't think that we should. And President Trump has recently said that the Iranians are duplicitous, they're liars, they do not keep their word. And he said this in the context of when a reporter was asking the president, you say that the United States is in negotiations with the Iranians, but the Iranians continue to say publicly that they're not. And President Trump rightly pointed out that the Iranians lie. And because of that, we cannot trust any deal that they even purportedly agree to. And to your point, what we know about the details of this current deal are very similar, if not identical, to the MOU, which failed because the Iranians never abided by it and continued to fire on into the Strait of Hormuz. J.D. Vance expected to actually represent the U.S. at a possible signing, and he says the biggest challenge is navigating who's running Iran. Listen.
I can certainly understand the American people are maybe looking at this and they say, well, it seems like we're making progress and then it seems like we're not. Well, the reality, Laura, is that number one, the Iranians are extraordinarily difficult people. Number two, they have a fractured system. So there are people within their system who want the war to be over. There are also people within their system who are crazy radicals who want the war to continue. Our job is to navigate through that and get the best outcome for the American people, but for the President of the United States as well.
Rebecca, there's a story in the New York Post this morning that when Iran's president, the civilian leader, went to go meet with the supreme leader, he was shoved into a dark car. The windows were blacked out. And so he wasn't even sure who he was meeting with. They kept it quick. He didn't shake hands. It was odd. So how the heck can we, the United States, be clear who we're negotiating with if that's how they treat their intra-party leadership? It makes no sense to me, Rebecca.
No.
Man, shut up. You can't even tell nobody what he's doing because he damn sure ain't doing nothing for you that he's doing for somebody else. So shut up. If you ain't got no context about why he's the best president ever, get out my chat.
It doesn't. And you can tell who is in charge by who is the one whose ideas are being carried out. And that's Vahidi, who's the head of the IRGC.
Best president for fucking weirdos.
And so the IRGC is the group that is firing into the strait, firing at Americans who are based in these Middle Eastern countries throughout the region. So it doesn't matter if the negotiators really do want to make a deal. If the negotiators are letting Vahidi fire at Americans, then Vahidi is effectively in charge. So we just heard from the vice president in that clip, and I think that he gives a great case for why the United States should not be pursuing diplomacy at this point with the Iranians, and why President Trump is right to surge U.S. forces into the region and to do what Admiral Cooper has said he's prepared to do, which is further degrade the Iranians' ability to carry out violence against the United States and its allies in the region. And I think that we're going to have to do that in order for the United States to take control of the Strait of Hormuz and get traffic flowing once again.
I think you're right. Rebecca Heinrichs, thank you for your insight as always. We appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
This maternity set feels soft, breathable, and easy to wear. Adjustable straps and a back bow add a sweet touch. The flowy top and stretchy shorts move with your growing bump. Perfect for home, errands, or a sunny getaway.
Great to have you here in New York.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Some are saying that she appears to be a sympathizer with some of those radical policy calls, eliminating the Senate, defunding the Department of War, ending all deportations. How do you see it?
Yeah, look, I think that there are so many issues where about 2/3 of Americans are in agreement with each other and in disagreement with the president. And my focus is on those things, right? 2/3 of Americans disagree with the Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. 2/3 of this country believe that wages ought to be higher. Even most Republicans think we ought to raise the minimum wage more than we have. Most Americans believe that we ought to have health care for everybody. There's a version of it I've proposed. There's obviously lots of different versions of how to do that. But that's something most people agree with each other on. Most people are against President Trump's health care cuts, many of which will go into effect next year, I think kind of cleverly timed to come just after the election. So that to me is where the center of gravity of the country meets the center of gravity in my party. And that's what my focus is on when I'm traveling around the country. I go to a lot of places, including more conservative places. We were in Nebraska recently. I was in Arkansas campaigning. And those are the things people most want to know about. How is my life going to be different depending who's in charge?
So you just pitched to them healthcare because that does top the list for a lot of people. They're concerned about the affordability issue when it comes to healthcare. Right. I'm surprised even to see that topping gas, food prices, housing prices even. It sounds like you're pitching Medicare for all. So what do you see?
Well, you remember we had a whole debate over this back when I was running for president. I favored something we called Medicare for all who want it. The idea is that there is that publicly available plan, but we're not going to force anybody onto it. I still think that's the right answer. And it's interesting, some of the critics of that plan before have come to embrace it now. I think it would be a good policy. But yeah, the cost of healthcare, the cost of gas, obviously through the roof as a direct result of President Trump breaking his promise not to start a war and what's going on in the Iran war. These are the things I'm being asked about when I'm on the road.
So when it comes to the Iran war, we've had many military experts on the program just the last 90 minutes telling us that it's time to go big. At this point in the war, I know you've been very critical of how long we have been in it. And you feel that President Trump has broken his promise to the American people.
Well, not I feel. He made a specific promise and then he did something else.
So at this point, based on where we are, what would you like to see happen next if you were advising President Trump?
Well, if I was advising President Trump, I'm trying to try that scenario on for size. I guess I'd advise him to start by telling the truth to the American people. Because when he says it's going to be 4 weeks and then breaks that promise, it reminds people of when he said he wouldn't start this war and broke that promise. When he says he will settle for nothing less than unconditional surrender and regime change, and then changed his mind, backpedaled, and agreed to a framework for a ceasefire that was very different, then that ceasefire has been broken. The outrageous news that we just got, that the Trump administration removed the names of 4 of our service members who were killed in action, apparently because the fact that they had been killed in action goes against his fiction that sometimes he says we're actually not in a war, even though everybody knows we are. What I would say to him is, when I was in uniform, when I was deployed, I knew that on some level, my life depended on the credibility of the people running our government. And American lives depend on him telling the truth, even when it's hard.
Do you agree with removing Iran's nuclear capabilities?
Yeah, Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. And each of the every administration in my lifetime has found a way of achieving that. It's just the other administrations managed to achieve it without getting the United States into a war and without getting American troops killed.
Removing Iran's nuclear capabilities?
Iran should never have a nuclear program.
Okay, so this is Montana Senator Tim Sheehy. He was on Fox and Friends. This is back on June 22nd, and he said this, listen.
What's worse than a forever war in the Middle East is a forever war right here on our streets. Just down the road, 9/11, the Iranians want to bring that war here. They want to create a global caliphate of Sharia law and kill all of us. And that's not a theory. That's what they actually tried to do every day. So I think we have to remember that. And, having our troops fight them there is far better than us fighting them here.
Get a thought there.
That is almost word for word what they told us when we were sold the war in Iraq. Remember in 2003, they said if we don't go in, invade Iraq, take down Saddam Hussein, if we're not fighting him there, we're going to wind up fighting him here. And that war in Iraq made America weaker. This war on Iran is making America weaker. Folks at home, look, 6 months ago, at least where I live in Michigan, you didn't have to get up in the morning and worry about the Strait of Hormuz. You didn't have to know where it was. It wasn't affecting your life. Now, folks from my neighbors in Michigan to people coast to coast in this country are paying more for gas, more for diesel, mortgage rates are going up, and of course our tax dollars are going into a war where it's pretty clear even the best case scenario is going to have us worse off than where we were. Because a year ago the Strait of Hormuz was open. Now we're fighting to try to figure out somehow how to get it open again. So back to that scenario you invited me to think about before where I'm somehow advising President Trump. I guess the other thing I would say is listen to the intelligence a little more. Listen to the same generals and the intelligence that told you, hey, if you do this, they might close the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, oh, that'll never happen. And then he did, and then that's what happened. Maybe he should pay more attention to that. And most of all, pay more attention to the American people who do not want an escalation of the Iran war.
Okay. I want to ask you about big change because I hear you talking about a majority of Democrats want some sort of dramatic or revolutionary change in our nation's government. I mean, you see a lot of it in the DSA playbook. But what would you be looking to do? Are you someone that could lead the country through this sort of revolutionary, dramatic change that many voters say they're seeking?
I think we do need dramatic change. And I think not just most Democrats, but most Americans want that. So, look, I'm more moderate on a lot of issues, but I also think we need radical change when it comes to our institutions.
Like what?
And, well, for example, right now we just allow gerrymandering. We allow so much manipulation of congressional districts that 9 out of 10 House races are decided before the first vote is even cast. And that's in a 50-50 country. That needs to change. Money in politics needs to change. The flood of corporate PAC money going into our politics. And I sincerely believe that being against that kind of role of money in politics doesn't have to be a left or right position. I was in Montana. There's a bipartisan initiative there. It's going to voters on the ballot. It's called the Montana Plan that would do something about money in politics. I personally believe that we ought to have a constitutional amendment about this to clear up that corporations are not the same thing as people, and that money, flooding money into campaigns out of corporate treasuries is not the same thing as a person using their right to speech. So, look, that's ambitious. That's definitely a big change, especially talking about a constitutional amendment. But we've changed we've amended our Constitution more than 25 times.
And you're willing to do so. I want to ask you about the Supreme Court. Rewind the tape. This is June 11th. You suggested this. Watch.
We have to deal with a Supreme Court that is now a rogue Supreme Court. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that there have to be 9 Supreme Court justices.
The mitten. Shout out to the mitten says Trump can't get anything right. He needs to resign. Smash that like button, double tap that screen, man, and make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Big boy things happening on the channel, and most definitely go to Rumble. And I'm going to be able to do a lot more over there on Rumble. But most of all, we're going to be able to, have our community and have our monetization. So you can watch on YouTube, but be ready to jump over on Rumble because we're going to be rocking over there as well. It's probably going to be YouTube and Rumble. But we're going to have more control and monetization straight off the rip at Rumble.
It doesn't even take a constitutional amendment.
So where are you going with this?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that under the laws of this country, under the Constitution of the...
You mean the TDS like Trump dick sucking? Yeah, it is heavy. It's heavy amongst MAGA.
This country, we could have a Supreme Court that better reflects the expectations of the American people and that is more legitimate. The legitimacy of the Supreme Court is, I believe, the lowest it's ever been in the eyes of the American people. It's come to feel like a nakedly partisan institution. We could do some things about that. At a minimum, term limits. So,
yeah, I was actually delivering fuel at the time that Biden was in office, and Bush when it went crazy, because Bush went crazy and Biden shit went crazy. Obama didn't never have no high ass gas, but one thing about Biden's high gas, it was only like that for like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at the most. This shit is going on 5-6 months. So the amount of money you paid extra per week, per day, per fill, man, this shit is like triple what Biden's cost expense was for his gas influx.
That you know for each presidential term how many Supreme Court appointments are going to go with it. I also think we would be better off with a court that has something like 13 justices that would match the number of districts that we have in the federal system, and ideally appoint them in a way that isn't so partisan. There are a lot of interesting different ideas and proposals for how to do it. One of them is called a balanced bench. So what you do is you have some appointed by Democrats, some appointed by Republicans, and some who can only be seated if there's a consensus among the rest. I'm not wedded to one single vision of reform. I think there are lots of different ways to do it, but my bigger point is this. If something can't go on forever, it won't. And the collapse in trust in the Supreme Court, the bizarre way.
Man, listen. I didn't even notice groceries was high under Biden. I swear I didn't. They was high, but not like the fuck they are now. Super high. Super duper fucking high. This shit right here is definitely turned up from Biden.
We win our congressional elections with maps drawn into these weird shapes in order to make one party or another party win. The level of money that is just flooding our political system, it can't go on. And when something unsustainable goes and goes and goes, you're either going to have reform or you're going to have a catastrophe. I want it to be reform, and I don't think that has to be a partisan issue.
Got it. Fox News polling also asks about immigration and deportation. Our new polling shows that just 7% of Americans think that illegal migrants should be allowed to remain in the United States. Yet, I just read the DSA playbook, Democrats, Socialists of America, and they want to let everybody in. Where do you stand on immigration, and should deportations continue to happen, or those just that have committed crimes? Where specifically are you standing on this issue?
Yeah, I disagree with the idea that you would just let everybody in, and I think most of us in this country do agree that if somebody's committed a crime, they have to be deported, they have to be held accountable, they have to face justice. Also, there have to be ways for people to have some way to get in line and earn citizenship, especially people who were brought here.
There's a lot of folks in your party who disagree with that.
There are some, yeah. I don't agree with everybody in my party on everything, but I think most Democrats, and actually, interestingly, most Americans agree on the broad picture of what to do. The weird thing is, how come that reform hasn't happened?
Barry talking about we fixing. Who the fuck is we, Barry? Please tell me. MAGA? Now, MAGA ain't fixing shit. All MAGA fixing is their asses from getting screwed. Bunch of fucking dummies.
See, I think a lot of voters who voted for Donald Trump believed him when he said that he was going to focus on those who committed crimes. Just like voters believed him when he said he was going to keep us out of wars like the war in Iran. And a lot of voters believed him when he said he was going to bring prices down on day one. Instead, if you look at the inflation rate on day one, when Donald Trump took over from Joe Biden, and you look at the inflation rate today, it's higher today. So you have this set of broken promises that I think is an opening for us as a country to have a different
you open the door to affordability in the economy.
Yeah.
So what are you offering? What are you offering? What is the solution to what so many of you Democrats are saying are failed economic policies in this country? Right now, I look at average hourly earnings, they're up. Wages are up. The American stock market has been rocking. It's at all-time highs. Growth has been up. What are you pitching? What do you think is the solution to the polling that does show that there is a frustration with the American people, specifically when it comes to affordability?
Yeah, I think Americans are frustrated because we see some of those top line numbers you're talking about. Economic growth overall up, stock market way up, but wages haven't moved nearly as much as profits have. It tells you that something is off. So some basic things we can do. First of all, raise wages. Again, most Republicans agree with me and disagree with Washington Republicans on having a minimum wage increase. It hasn't increased in years. At least over 12 is what most Republicans can agree on. I think it needs to go north of that.
Small business owners are going to say, you're going to kill me.
They've always said that, but right now the minimum wage is lower when you account for inflation by something like 30% than it was the last time we raised it. We should just index it to inflation so we don't have these fights every few years. We should do healthcare that's available to everybody, like that proposal I was telling you about earlier. Another thing we can do is just stop making it worse. We woke up to news today that Donald Trump is imposing a new 10% tax effective at midnight last night that we got to pay on all kinds of goods. Why would you put an extra tax, an extra tariff on things when affordability is so hard?
But I'm asking you, how do you make life more affordable for the average American?
I just told you, we cut the cost of healthcare, right? And also, if Republicans hadn't gotten rid of that help on healthcare premiums, right, premiums would be lower. So we should make healthcare premiums lower instead of higher, the way congressional Republicans raised them. We should make sure wages are higher instead of keeping them stuck where they are. We should be supporting childcare. By the way, I'm very interested in maybe a bipartisan consensus where we work on childcare that's not just about supporting childcare in an institutional setting where you like drop somebody off at a center. That's great for some families. A lot of families are doing family childcare. Sometimes they're like me in a sandwich generation where you're looking over after both a parent and children at the same time. We should be supporting family caregivers as well. We could use tax credits to do that. Another thing that would make America more affordable, do more with the child tax credit, which successfully cut the rate of child poverty in half. And then congressional Republicans refused to extend it. All of these are specific, concrete things that will work, that most Americans agree on, but you can't get through Washington. Why? Because the political system is broken, which is why I keep talking about those reforms on how we elect House members, money in politics, how we elect the president is another one I care about. All these things that I think would make a difference.
Real quick before you go, I mean, has this socialist wave, I mean, you're sitting in New York City, we've got a socialist mayor in New York City, Zohran Mamdani. Is it gone too far, do you believe?
Look, there's always going to be some people in my party who go too far for me, people I disagree with. If you pick the 5 or 10 or 15 furthest left people in our party, they're going to, by definition, disagree with a lot of others. But there's so much that we do, in fact, agree on. And I think one of the reasons why you see people who run on a promise of shaking it up, whether it's a DSA candidate on the left or whether it's someone like Donald Trump, is because people can tell that the system we have is not just showing its age, it's letting us down. That system can change. There's a way to do that that is not destructive.
What kind of Democrat are you? I mean, we've got blue MAGA, we've got socialists. What are you?
Look, there's label after. I don't know. I'm a Pete Buttigieg Democrat. I think I'm a common sense Democrat. But of course, everybody thinks that their ideas are common sense to them.
And you're running for president?
I'm not running for anything. I'm helping people who are, because this is a very important election where people are seeing that their everyday lives, from the price of gas to healthcare, is on the line. And I think a lot of people who generally prefer a Republican president still want to see some kind of balance, some kind of check, some kind of restraint, and are considering, maybe for the first time in a long time, voting for a Democrat for Congress.
Really interesting stuff. Appreciate you coming by today. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks for having me.
All right, come back soon. All right.
Pete Buttigieg is doing a lot of campaigning for candidates right now, and that may not sound that surprising. We're pretty close to the midterm elections. But he's doing something I think is really interesting. He's really focusing his time right now in red states and districts where the Democratic Party has not won in some time. Because he believes Democrats can, of course, win in those places this November. And one of those states is Nebraska, where Buttigieg rallied today in a House district that Democrats are looking to flip. Another one where he was this weekend is Iowa, where Buttigieg spoke just over the last couple of days. And he pointed out in that speech that the abstract and sometimes academic way that some Democrats approach politics muddies what should be the party's message, that Trump's attacks on democracy are viscerally hurting people.
250 years ago this month, our founders didn't go to war to overthrow a king because they read John Locke and Rousseau in their studies and thought it would be neat to go try this stuff out someplace. They put their lives on the line to create something new in this world because they thought it would make everyday life better if the people were in charge of the government instead of the other way around. 9 out of 10 House races drawn so that you know who's going to win before the first vote is cast in a 50-50 country. This is not an academic concern. This hurts us. This is why things aren't working properly. This is how they can make you pay more at the pump for a war you never asked for. How they burn down the Department of Education while we're worried about kids who can't do math or read like they're supposed to. This is why we can't have nice things. But it doesn't have to be this way. And that's what we're here to do something about.
Joining me now is former Transportation Secretary and former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. It's great to see you. You've had quite a good time, it seems like. We just showed a clip out of the campaign trail over the last several days. It's interesting to me, and I just mentioned this. I mean, I know you were a sought-after surrogate on the campaign trail. You probably get lots of calls from people asking you to campaign. You've made a decision as of late to really focus your time in red states. Why?
Well, I think it's important that we reach out everywhere at this moment when more and more people, including independents and a lot of people who usually vote Republican, are ready for something different. Sometimes I think we've been made to feel like we who are opposed to what's going on right now in Washington and in Congress are the minority. We not only have a majority, we have a supermajority in public opinion when it comes to the Iran war, when it comes to the prices being too high, when it comes to the need for the wealthiest people and corporations to pay their fair share, on and on down the list, healthcare, you name it. But having a majority in public opinion doesn't automatically mean you get a majority in Congress. You got to go out there and work for it. And what I have found in places like Nebraska's 2nd District, where I was today, like Iowa, where I was yesterday, other places I've been campaigning, from Marjorie Taylor Greene's district in Northwest Georgia to the work we were doing in Montana to heading out to Florida in a little while. There are so many people who, if we can get in front of them with that message, I think they're going to respond and are going to insist on change, deliver change. And it's a reminder also that you don't have to wait till the next presidential election to do something. We have a lot of elections right now in front of us in 2026. We got to make sure that they go well.
Part of the argument you've made, and I was reading your speech this morning from Iowa, and obviously I've seen a lot of the clips, is that it's important to kind of, and people just heard you say this too, invite people who voted for Trump in the past into the Democratic coalition. And that makes sense. I mean, more voters means you win elections. That's kind of how the whole thing works. But how do you do that? Because right now, as you well know, there are so many people out there who are part of the Democratic coalition who have long been, who feel like their voices aren't heard. Nobody's speaking to them. Nobody's speaking out for them, who feel alienated and that their very existence is under threat. So how do you do that? Well, not alienating those groups of people who Democrats also need to vote for them.
Well, that's why it's so important to point to all of these things where we have this in common, where it's not about triangulating some ideological middle. It's about finding that most Americans, the left, the center, and quite a few people who usually vote more right, are going to agree right now on healthcare, on all of the corruption that's going on right now, but only if we do the work. And I don't think there is any contradiction between standing firm in our values and being there for people who have been part of our coalition for many years and many generations, and inviting people to come join that coalition and grow it. The most effective Democratic candidates and presidents in my lifetime did that. I think back to how it felt in supposedly deep red Indiana, the night that state turned blue in 2008, as Barack Obama both consolidated that Democratic coalition and invited a lot of people who usually voted the other way to cross over. We have a moment like that on our hands because there's so many people who, frankly, believed the presidents that the promises that the president made. Far too many voters were on wars, and rather than being hostile to them as voters, I think we have a chance now to invite them in because they're asking a lot of questions about how things ever got to this point.
In your speech today, you reiterated how Democrats can continue doing politics as usual, which I think the majority of people watching it was like, yeah, they can't keep doing it because it's not working, and we all see the polling numbers. What do you mean by that exactly? What specific things do you think Democrats should avoid repeating or continuing to do?
Well, I think we've got to recognize that many of the institutions that are being destroyed right now by the Trump administration also cannot and should not be put back together just the way they looked in 2021 or 2012. I do think there is a risk that we might imagine that our job is to take power and just put everything back the way it was, but that's not going to work either. If our economic and political and social systems were working just fine, we wouldn't be here. So the old status quo can't be the answer. We've got to have new answers, and we've got to take big swings at major political reform. Again, I think there's a moment here, for example, on money in politics. You don't have to be a Democrat and you don't have to be in a blue state to be part of the majority that wants to change that, including, if necessary, a constitutional amendment to deal with Citizens United. And part of the message that I had in Iowa and that I'm taking everywhere I go is our economic problems are related to to the problems in our political system. You know, there is a conventional wisdom out there among some political strategists saying, don't talk about what's wrong with our democracy because we should only be talking about the kitchen table. To me, those two things are intimately connected. The reason we are paying more at the pump, the reason our mortgages are unaffordable in this country is directly related to the fact that there is no accountability in our government, and there won't be until we fix Congress, fix the Supreme Court, fix money in politics, and we absolutely cannot be afraid to talk about those big reforms as well as the ins and outs of healthcare, education, the things we want to do on day one.
Accountability, you hear that word a lot. I hear it a lot. I'm sure you hear it a lot. People really want it, right? What does that look like as we look ahead? Because there's not unlimited hours in the day. There's not unlimited time in Congress. What do you think accountability looks like as we look ahead?
Well, when given the chance, Congress has to, a Democratic-led Congress, has to establish accountability, first of all, around the just naked corruption that is going on. This is not a political question. The idea that the American people shouldn't have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars of our taxes on retrofitting a secondhand jumbo jet. The idea that there is something highly questionable about people from the President of the United States to a lot of other officials getting rich on stock trades while making decisions that move markets. Dealing with that is not some kind of partisan conquest. That's something that most Americans can actually come together around. But also there's the day-to-day accountability that our democratic system is supposed to deliver. See, this is part of the problem with gerrymandering. If 9 out of 10 House districts are ones where you know who's going to win before the first vote is cast, then members of Congress don't feel a level of accountability. They don't feel responsible for anything from big policy questions like standing up to this Iran war, which is supposed to be Congress's job to declare or to stop, or their personal conduct like trading stocks and getting rich when no member of Congress should be trading stocks in the first place.
One of the other things I think that has been really interesting about the speeches you've given is that they're very forward-looking. You talk about kind of the period post-Trump, or where we go from here, which is so important for people to think about. And you said this thing, and having worked in government a lot myself, I very much related to this in a recent interview where you said that serving in the Biden administration radicalized you, that just seeing how hard it was to get even common sense things done, like delivering a new bridge or airport, changed you. Obviously, you were the transportation secretary, so it's understandable that those were the examples you gave. But just like bigger pictures here, what does solving that problem look like if Democrats win back power and eventually the White House? Because you already referenced, like, you can't rebuild things and put them exactly back together. What does that look like when you're thinking big about how to go from here?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if you have a common sense view that you share with most Americans, it will take radical change to actually act on it in today's Washington. That's what I'm getting at. I'm not talking about ideology. I'm saying that in order to get anywhere, even as an ideological moderate, you have to be ready for radical change in our institutions. What does that look like? Some of the changes I was just talking about around money and politics, around Congress and how elections work, certainly making sure that we have the voting rights reform and protections that are doubly important because of what has been done to systematically tear down black political representation in order to try to keep this Republican Congress in power. But look, we've also got to recognize there are certain institutions that we have cherished as Democrats that are important institutions that probably can't and shouldn't go back to the old way. It was criminally wrong to basically gut the Department of Education as they have done. I also don't think our project is to make the Department of Education look just the way it looked the minute before Donald Trump got here. I could say the same thing about foreign aid. Again, criminally wrong to have demolished the U.S. Agency for International Development. That doesn't mean that we should put it back just the way it was. I know a lot of mayors who would love to see dramatic change in how housing and urban development works and how federal dollars can or can't be used to help make housing more affordable in cities. We should be listening to them, thinking about how we build things from the ground up, because there will be a moment when we have that clean sheet, that fresh start. I hate how we got here. We got here because of all of the destruction that's going on in this moment. But it's also a chance to build something new on sometimes the rubble of these institutions that were frankly already rickety, already showing their age years before we got to this moment.
If you ask most people who have worked in Democrat administrations, they would say things were too bureaucratic too. It's just that, and too bloated too. It's just how you do it. We don't have nearly enough conversations about the path forward, so you have agreed to stick around. I'm very grateful for that. We're going to take a quick break. We have more questions. We'll be right back. We are back with former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. So one of the great benefits of having a public platform, a huge one as you do, is you can share your ideas and think big thoughts about how to make things better for people in this country. It also means you can be targeted by people who want to do you or your family harm. And I know you are no stranger to that at all. And I wanted to just ask you about something you've been very candid and open about. And I when I read the Substack piece, which I think people have probably seen, I had a hard time getting through it, and I felt a deep sense of rage for you and Chasten and your family, as anyone would. But for anyone who doesn't remember what I'm talking about, Pete and his family were targeted and subjected to an investigation by Child Protective Services because someone reported a fake anonymous tip. And I just wanted to ask you, because now it's been a couple of weeks, if you could talk to this person who did this to you, what would you say to them?
I'll just say this hurt a whole family. This didn't just hurt me. And whatever you think about me, my politics, you just leave my children out of it. They're 4 years old. They do not deserve to be affected or impacted. They shouldn't have to know the first thing about any of this. And there are plenty of things that are acceptable, that are fair game, including really tough arguments, tough rhetoric, whatever. But you don't bring somebody's kids into this. And I don't know what else to say. Well, the other thing I'll say, you know, it was not the easiest decision to go public about this and talk about what happened, but we thought it was important. And as soon as we did, we heard from so many people around the country, people we know and have worked with, people we don't know, some people that I have campaigned against. And I would like to believe that shows that for most people, there is a line, there is a boundary, and that most people are hungry for a different, better public life in this country. That whatever disagreements we're always going to have about taxes or healthcare or whatever, that certain things we can agree on about what we want life, including public life, to be like, because this kind of thing cannot be the cost of committing to public service or public life in America.
I've heard you say about this that it makes you both want to kind of run straight to your family, and also makes you want to make the world better for them, which is incredibly powerful. You've also talked about how your kids are too young. They're only 4 years old. Mine are a little older, but they're too young to know what happened and why. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've thought about this, and I'm sure Chasten has, with the internet and the media. They're gonna find out one day, and maybe sooner than you'd like. Have you thought about how you're going to talk to them about it? And I hate that this is a question that you even have to think about.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know exactly what impact the experience will have had on them, how much they're going to remember of it. But I try to remember also that they will grow up and read about all this, hear about all this, and learn about all this. The best we can do is both to prepare them for the world as it is, that they are growing up and growing into, but also change it. It's not too late to be at work changing the way things work in this country. Not that I can fix it all by the time they're 15 or by the time they're 50, but we got to be working on that day in, day out. And I'm so sure that it doesn't have to be this way, and that they can inherit a way of doing things in this country that's better than what we're putting up with right now.
I always tell new working parents that part of the story of their kids is their own efforts to make the world a better place. That's part of the story of your kids, too, as hard as this stuff is. I have to ask you before you go, I know you recently told a reporter, I laughed at the answer to this in Iowa, that you're not rolling out a run for president in 2028. I think you were asked the question and you said, nope. It was pretty simple. I know you're not going to announce anything tonight. I know you're focused on 2026, but you've thought so much about the future. I'm just curious, if you've thought about what qualities and what vision you think the next nominee needs to have. It's a different time even than when you ran and others ran.
You know, years ago, after my presidential campaign, we started an organization called Win the Era, and that organization's still going. And the reason that we called it that is, every time I'm involved in an election, I care deeply about winning the election, just like I care about winning the elections in Iowa and Nebraska that I was involved with the last couple of days. But you need to win an election in order to secure an era, in order to make things better for that long haul. And I think that we need that kind of thinking right now. I think 250th is a great opportunity to step back and actually think about what it's going to be like by the time of the 300th. I know that might sound a little crazy, but certainly expect that my children will be celebrating the 300th. With some luck, I might be there to see it too. And we're going to ask ourselves what we've done between this moment and that moment, so that by then, the sort of corruption that's going on right now is unthinkable. So that by then, the idea that people would be choosing between health insurance payments and mortgage payments seems barbaric. It is barbaric, but it will seem barbaric and antique by then. And for all of that, I think we need leadership. And I'm not just talking about the next president, but the leaders that we're going to elect right now in 2026, who can think about that long term, not in some abstract, airy, academic kind of way, but okay, what do we have to do now? What reforms do we have to do now on everything from things like gerrymandering and how the Supreme Court works to our tax code and how unfair it is? What do we have to be doing right now in ways that we will be glad we did, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard, especially if it takes a long time. The longer something takes to get done, the sooner we should have started on it. And I'm hoping that we can continue to see leaders who can see, of course, to the next election, but far beyond that, and make the right kind of long-term choices that are going to matter. I used to talk in these terms because I was the young guy in the room running for mayor in my 20s, being a presidential candidate in my 30s. Now I think of it in a whole new way, which is, every time I do break the news to our kids that Papa's going to be on the road for a couple of days, I think about why and what's at stake. And the reason, the answer, of course, is that we've got to give them a better world than we're living in right now.
Pete Buttigieg, I don't envy your children and the kind of questioning they may get at the dinner table when they're older, given your wealth of knowledge about things. But thank you for being here. I'm sorry that you've been through everything you've been through. And I think every heart of anybody who's a parent is with you in this moment, no matter their political party. Thank you again.
Thanks very much. Good being with you.
We'll be right back.
Good afternoon, Mr. Blanche.
Good afternoon.
Our president has a very well-documented history of attempting to corruptly influence government officials to advance his own personal interest. He called the Republican Secretary of Georgia asking him to find enough votes to overturn the election. He withheld military aid to pressure Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden's son. For these things, he has been impeached. He's been criminally convicted in Georgia, indicted in Georgia, because he uses his power to unjustly influence people. When a president routinely pressures public officials for his own personal benefit, the Department of Justice has to remain independent. This brings me really to you, and I think what has you at the center of so much concern is that you seek to lead the Department of Justice after being the president's personal lawyer. The American people are really entitled to know whether your allegiance to the rule of law is your focus or your allegiance to one man who clearly has an insatiable appetite for revenge, self-enrichment, and the abuse of power. So I want to talk about your record. Under you, the department has prosecuted people that have caught folks on both sides of the political aisle by surprise. Jim Comey, Letitia James, my colleague Adam Schiff, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. This casts a shadow over your ideas, any ideas of independence. You directed the arrest of Mayor Ras Baraka of my city of Newark. You weren't at Delaney Hall on May 9th, 2025, when he was arrested. But yes or no, did you have a conversation with Special Agent in Charge Ricky Patel ordering him to arrest Mayor Baraka?
I had a conversation. I didn't order him to arrest. I authorized the arrest, which is my job.
So you were not there, and we have body camera footage of him then moving and saying, "We are arresting the mayor right now per," this is his quote, "the Deputy Attorney General of the United States." I want to put that into the record, your comments there. And the district court, assessing all of your conduct, admonished the Department of Justice. This is the quote of the judge, the federal judge. "Your role is not to advance political agendas. Your allegiance is to the impartial application of the law and to uphold due process for all." But this is just one example cited by over 1,200 current and former Department of Justice officials appointed under presidents of both parties who warned that you should not be in this position because of your inability to be independent from your personal allegiance to Donald Trump over the rule of law. I met yesterday with Epstein survivors. Some of them are here in the room today. Congress, in a bipartisan fashion, passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act because the American people were demanding justice. Yet you failed to abide by that law and release the files by the deadline established by the law. And when the files were finally released, you failed to protect the survivors that law was intended to protect. Survivors' personal information, including names, phone numbers, home addresses, and images were released. Powerful people were redacted. Survivors were subjected to re-traumatization. More than 1,200 victims, yet only 2 people have ever been prosecuted, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I was stunned earlier by your conversation with one of my colleagues that you wouldn't even commit to meeting with the survivors, but you did meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. Your claim that you can't meet with these victims because they're represented by counsel is utter nonsense. Counsel can be present or a client can waive their right to have counsel, but you're a lawyer. You know this. That was not truthful, what you said to my colleague. You said that they should meet with the FBI. All of these women have reported their crimes decades ago, but yet you won't meet with them. What you will do is meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. Over a year ago, you sat with her, and you publicly said you were seeking the truth. So let's talk about what that 2-day meeting produced. Did your interview with Ms. Maxwell lead to a single additional person being charged, yes or no?
No.
Did it lead to a single new investigation, yes or no?
I can't talk about whether there's any investigation.
I'm not asking you about an ongoing or closed investigation. I'm just asking you about this unusual...
I can't answer your question, yes or no.
Did you or anyone else from the DOJ or associated with the president discuss a presidential pardon with Ghislaine Maxwell or her attorneys?
No.
Did you discuss clemency, yes or no?
No.
Did you discuss...
She was convicted. What do you mean clemency?
Did you discuss her transfer to another institution, yes or no?
No.
Well, just 1 week after your meeting, Ms. Maxwell was transferred from a low-security federal institution to a minimum security prison camp. Were you involved with that transfer?
When, as I've talked about before, in the time leading up to me going down to meet with her, we learned that she was receiving threats. It turned out...
I'm going to interrupt you for a matter of time because...
Okay, well, it's not a question I can answer, apparently, in the time you're giving me.
I'm going to tell you this because I deal with issues of criminal justice. When people are under threats in a Bureau of Prison facility, they're put into solitary confinement or protective. They're not moved to a camp.
That's not always true.
It is.
You're just wrong.
What is true is someone that is accused of child sex trafficking under the Bureau of Prison's own policies is not put in a facility like this that seems clearly like a reward. The Department of Justice is also responsible that powerful corporations play by the same rules. Let's take a proposed merger between Paramount, Warner Brothers, and Discovery. This is no ordinary transaction. It was a proposed $111 billion merger involving 2 of the last remaining legacy Hollywood studios. As Deputy Attorney General and later Acting Attorney General, you exercise oversight of the Antitrust Division. You approved the decision to close the department's investigation into that merger, yes or no?
I was part of the decision. I
Yes,
don't know
you were
whether-
involved in that.
You
That
don't
is a
even let
yes.
me answer, man.
Did
That's
the
incredible.
career attorneys
The
who
answer to-
investigated that deal recommend closing that investigation?
I didn't have a conversation with the career, but as I was saying
I didn't
earlier,
ask you that. I asked you, did the career attorneys who investigated the deal recommend closing the investigation?
I have no idea what they
You were in charge of that department, yet you have no idea. Well, this
I didn't say I had no idea. It's no idea about the question you asked about what the career attorney's view was.
You do not know what the career attorney's view was.
I'm not sure what the view was with respect to closing it or not closing it.
Let me tell you why ethics laws that bind you about the appearance of impropriety are so damning in this case. On the same day that Paramount shareholders voted to approve the merger, David Ellison, the head of the acquiring company, hosted a dinner that you attended honoring the President of the United States. While you were at that dinner, the DOJ was still investigating a merger. Did you speak with Mr. Ellison on that evening?
No.
Did you discuss with anyone involved in that organization that evening the department's ongoing investigations?
No.
Well, 6 weeks later, after that dinner, that investigation was closed, that you're stating you have no idea if the attorneys in charge even finished their investigation.
That's not what I said.
What did you say?
You asked me a question about whether the attorneys recommended that the investigation be closed, and I said I wasn't sure. That's different than what you just threw back at me.
Do you believe that creates an appearance of impropriety that you were at a dinner?
No.
Okay. The Justice Department ethics rules are very clear about avoiding the appearance of impropriety. In a case like this, I don't think that's appearance of impropriety. I think that's improper. That the connected and the powerful are getting a chance to rub shoulders. It would seem appropriate that you avoid those kind of appearances and dinners like that.
Every appearance or dinner or speech that I give are cleared by ethics officials.
So your attendance at that dinner was cleared by ethics officials?
Everything that I do.
I didn't ask you everything you do. Was your appearance at that dinner
You
cleared?
can ask the questions, but you cannot control my answers. I'm under oath, and I can answer the questions. I choose to answer them.
Were you
so what I will tell you
approved
is when I do
yes
things
or no?
outside, when I
Were
do
you
things-
approved
when
by
I do
ethics
things
to-
outside of the department, whether it's a speech, whether it's a dinner, whether it's an event, they are approved by ethics officials.
You did not answer whether that attendance was approved.
Every time I go out, it's approved. Yes.
You know, Lincoln, it was said about him that if you want to see the true character of a man, don't view him in adversity, give him power. I believe you've had a lot of